morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. My name is Callie, and this is another weekend of clarinets, cats, and coffee. In this week's video, I am going to share 4 tips with you to help you decide how to make your music more expressive. For our example today, I'm going to use actually one of my favorite sections for demonstrating this in the Mozart Concerto. So it's part of the development section, which is after the exposition, where Mozart takes the melody and he turns it upside down, does all kinds of fun stuff with it, okay? So this is right at the beginning of the development. I like using this as an example because he plays this melody twice. It's the exact same thing, right? And so if we do no dynamic shaping, no expression at all, it's extremely boring. All right, so there is our blank slate, okay? So the first thing that I want you guys to think about as clarinet players, especially playing classical music, your ability to shape your phrase and individual notes is equivalent to an oboist's use of vibrato, or a flautist, or a vocalist, okay? We don't use vibrato to be expressive, except in certain genres of music. We typically don't do this here. It's extremely hard to tune to a clarinet just because of the harmonics and the overtones and all of that crazy stuff. It's really hard to tune to a clarinet that is using vibrato, okay? And so this is why we don't do it. So use shaping of your notes to give your phrase life. Okay, so in that example, still a little bit boring, right? There's not a whole lot of purpose, but now it's starting to sound a little bit more graceful, a little bit less like we're just using the clarinet sample on our MIDI controller, and a little bit more human. The next tip that I have for you is to phrase through moving notes. A lot of times moving notes are just embellishments on the main melodic content, and if we don't bring those out, then the embellishments themselves will be kind of boring. So let's see, move through moving notes. Moving notes meaning, in this case, eighth notes. That's starting to come to life a little bit, trying to just blow through, do little crescendos and a little bit of shaping through the moving notes. We're on the right track. My third tip for you is think about phrasing over your bar lines. So we don't have tunnel vision, right? When we're playing music and people listening, they don't know we have measures, right? We don't want to play like we're just looking through a straw and barely chugging along, right? We have to think in phrases, not by measures. So phrasing over the bar line, for example, the very first measure, you have a little eighth note at the end of the measure. If we chop that off, if we decrescendo into it, it's gonna be kind of boring, right? So that's a little exaggerated. I know none of you guys do that, but we're gonna think about phrasing over the bar lines a little bit, which, let's try. Great, so that's starting to come to life even more. The last thing, this is the fun part. This is where you get to be creative and experiment a little bit. You want to think about the points of tension that's happening harmonically, whether it's vertical tension, meaning the chords of the music, or horizontal tension, meaning the progression, the linear progression, and dissonant notes within the melody. So my suggestion is to experiment a little bit with where the emphasis should be in your phrases. Now, since this is basically the same thing twice, you have an infinite number of things that you can do to make this sound interesting. So I'm going to play it a couple of different ways just to get you started. And I'm going to indicate here on the screen hearts, where I have the main point of the phrase, the highest point of each phrase indicated with the heart. And I'm showing crescendos and decrescendos to show kind of how I'm shaping my phrases. So Alright, so there are parts of the first one I like more and parts of the second one I like more, so I would experiment and change things around, but the whole point of this is for you to determine, one, what sounds the best to you, what sounds the most musical, and to just get the gears turning, thinking from a bigger picture standpoint, and also doing the fun thing, which is figuring out how you want to put your own spin on expressing this music. And Mozart is so much fun to do this with, because it's kind of like one of those things where what you emphasize and how you speak can change the meaning of what you're trying to say. So I like to think of it as like, we're not doing gymnastics here. 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 And we're not doing gymnastics here. Completely different meaning each time. Same thing here in music. So I'll leave you guys with that. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a good week next week. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, happy practicing.